Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, television, or if you're watching this recorded, which is most of you. We thank you for joining us. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, doing well. Good to see you this morning. Or morning for me. I think it's a little afternoon for you there.
It is a little afternoon, and just had to readjust this morning, which sometimes we have to do. My computer in the studio was not keeping a charge for some reason because I use my laptop, and I'll figure that out later. But when you get like 15 minutes before you got to start, you don't have time for that. So.
Yeah, we have technical difficulties from time to time. This is a new one, right?
Yeah, it's a new one, but again, I'm fortunate to have this other computer that is upstairs. If my wife finds out I can do it in here, she may want to redo the studio downstairs. So don't tell anybody. All right, so how you been doing?
I've been doing okay. We're getting that hot California weather right now. I'm between LA and the desert out here, right in the middle, basically, and we're hitting 100-degree temperatures each day, most of last week and into this week and a little bit of next week. They're predicting. So just trying to deal with that hot weather in the daytime. Also had my hot water heater went out, so I got to get that put in today. So it's the cold shower's okay at this time of the year.
Really, all you need to do is just set the water outside in a bucket, I guess.
Yeah, that definitely. You probably are right on that, Jeff. I could probably do that.
Yeah, because that should be plenty warm. I know because we have a hot tub, and the hot tub's usually at 105. So I think 100 would probably be pretty good for getting clean.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So then it's good to be back with everyone today. You have anything you want to announce before we move on here?
We're compiling a list of ladies who are interested in an online meeting together just to discuss various topical issues, whether family related, the Bible, current events. So if there are any women out there that might be interested in this, please shoot me an email and I'll get you added to the list. And those who are already sent me an email, I will shortly be sending you an update on information in regards to that.
All right. So that is that just going to be women only online getting together?
Yeah, just the ladies.
We had not taking over the church or anything, right?
No, nothing like that. It's just for women. Younger women too. Late teens. You're welcome to get involved in this also. No issues there. So just shoot me an email and I'll be providing further details very soon.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, we have a women's meeting, but I guess we'll bring on a man here to join us. A man's man.
Yeah. Speaking of men.
The man.
I think that relates to, I'm not going to give it away, but that's a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. So.
Yeah, it really was. I was thinking about that.
What's going on with you, Blake, since we last spoke?
Yeah, hey guys. It's been good. We've been preparing for the feast for CEM and CGI's joint feast site that's been going on. And of course, we're about 80 days out, right? So things are getting real. Working on the trailer project. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but we've been working on a disaster relief trailer to go and be of assistance to the least of us, right? This disaster relief trailer to go and take care of anyone that's been a part of a natural disaster, to get together with men and women and to enable, the people of the church to go out and work with their hands and be of service to the least of us, rather. And so working on that, that's about done. working on the YEA website, which is going to be for free. It's putting together a lot of the new, I think they call them modals, which are basically online courses, and really streamlining the youth educational program to an online community. So working on a lot of different things. We got a lot of irons in the fire over here. So
very good.
Yeah, that trailer sounds pretty interesting. So, what are you doing to put that together? Like some details.
So we basically have a 16-foot long trailer with an additional, 4-foot or 8-foot patio on the back of it. Mm-hmm. And it's basically concession stand style with openings on both sides that will have awnings, has a charging station, has Wi-Fi, has the ability to, prepare food, hot food and cold food, has 2 porta potties on the back there, has a way for people to charge their phones, has a way for us to go ahead and to really be of support to the first responders,
like people in the community that come charge their phones if they're in a disaster,
and also first responders. See, the idea of this is that it's about the first 48 hours that we can be of assistance. We're nimble, we're small, we can deploy quickly. But a lot of these major organizations, that will be a part of municipalities, they take about 48 to 72 hours to get on site. And so for the first 2.5, 3 days, people are kind of left out there in the wind. We'd have chainsaws on there. We'd have generators, really just trying to get out there and to, help out people, take care of the least of those, the least of us. So that's the idea.
Oh, well, once you get that up and running, I definitely would like to see some pictures and maybe, anything that you have once you are able to deploy.
Sure. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's really an expression of the idea that we're to be in this world, right? We're to be in action. We're to be in motion. We're to have a faith that is lived, and a lot of times I think people have historically, kind of stayed away from the world, as it were, and kind of, just kind of shied away from that. But there's a lot of value in that, I think, and not just to men, but also to women, to help out. So
well, I think that's great. It's good to hear that, because I think a lot of, and I've dealt with this recently, people kind of think the Church of God doesn't do any type of charitable work for the communities and stuff, and maybe there's good reasons to think that, but I know a lot of people who do, and I'm glad to hear that we have some Church of God people who are thinking of some innovative ways to continue to help people.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's not correct. Yeah. I think that what's actually happened historically is a lot of individuals have acted on their own. Now, corporate or, local, level leadership at the church level has maybe been lacking a little bit. But it's an axe to grind for a lot of people. Oh, the church hasn't been a part of service. It's like, well, maybe it hasn't done a great job, but nonetheless, we're here in motion. Gary's asking what the range of the operations is. It's probably about 200 to 300 miles, Gary, maybe a little bit more. We're not trying to go all the way to, Florida or up to New York or anything like that, but, just local here. It's more of an idea than anything, right? It's an ability for us to go and talk to other churches as well. So, but, you can tell I'm really excited about it, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time since we, but yeah, once it's up and going, I'll come back on and maybe we can talk about it, have an episode on the trailer.
All right, itself. Good. Yeah, because today I think you're gonna let us know how to be like a man's man, how to be a biblical man.
I don't know about that,
something like that.
Yeah. Well, over a year ago, one of my good friends, Peter, young dude, 30-ish, I think he's about 34, Stanford graduate, top 5% of his class, mechanical engineer, business owner, light of the, we'd show up to a party or to a get together, was the light of the party, very kind of kidding and very smart, obviously. About a year ago, he just decided to step off the side of a bridge, take his own life, and no note that was left, and really just has us all kind of scratching our heads. What's going on here? What happened? And as much as I would like for Peter to be a part of a, kind of to be a rarity or to be some kind of isolated case or, an outlier, the truth of the matter is Peter's a part of a growing statistic in America, at least. and that is the statistic that right now people that are part of his age cohort are more likely to kill themselves than ever, and that's a new thing, and there's other statistics as well, and I've had a couple other friends who have actually committed suicide in last 3 or 4 years, and it just has me asking this question: what is going on with young men right now? Maybe you've had this question. Maybe you guys have been wondering what's going on, because something feels like it's shifted over the last 10 years. Maybe have y'all had the same experience, or am I taking crazy pills over here?
No, I think just in reading and talking to my daughter, seeing how young kids are reacting today, dealing with things today, I have seen and read about an uptick in suicide, especially in the United States, the Western world, and there are different ideas as to why that is. But one of the ones that I'm seizing upon is just, along with that research in suicide, I've seen research in the decrease in Christianity, the decrease in religion, the decrease in knowing that there's something bigger than you out there. And I think if that's missing in your life, again, not all people who commit suicide are missing that. So there are other reasons, but I think that is one of the reasons for an uptick in the amount of suicide in the world.
Mm-hmm. You know what I've noticed, and I guess it's probably this cultural shift, but it kind of starts with like media, I think, and maybe film and television, like communicating maybe in subtle ways or not so subtle ways, that being a man is something bad, or the patriarchy is bad, or these type of ideas that men can't, are somehow responsible for all the world's evils,
Sure.
and things like that. And I think there's like, I heard of a growing movement called like incels, which are the involuntarily celibate guys who are, I guess they have problems dating, problems meeting women, problems relating to women, and usually they get on in communities, and sometimes it could turn violent, or it turns, there's just all types of variety of that problems with I guess men learning how to be a part of society.
Yeah, it's a good, both really great points, and exactly that. I mean, there's an identity crisis, right? I would say maybe going on with men, and that's a part of the idea that I want to cover today. Is that yes, there is a biblical standard to manhood, and if I even bring that up in some circles, guys, I get labeled immediately before I can even talk about anything as being toxic. Masculinity maybe comes to mind, right? This idea that you can't talk about the virtues of being a man without having some kind of pushback. And there's some statistics that actually point to, yes, I mean, technically, we are dealing with things that are causing to us to shift. There's been an androgenization of men and women, right? The idea that men are becoming more feminized and women are becoming more, masculine. And part of it has to do with some of the dietary things. I mean, one person put the T levels, the testosterone levels of men during biblical times at 1,500, which is compared to nowadays, it's about 300 to 400, so, that's due to a lot of different, things such as, plastics, parabens, kind of being more sedentary than we used to be, sunscreen. There's all kinds of factors like that playing into it, right? What would cause men to become more prone to being, having more pronounced estrogen levels, which lends itself. You start thinking about the trans movement. You start thinking about more prevalent homosexuality. I mean, I'm not trying to connect all these things, but I'm saying that there's a confluence of different things going on here.
But I mean, what you're saying is true. I mean, I guess they may not know exactly what's causing it, but there is something causing the testosterone level of men to be lower.
So let me just ask. How do they get, this number for testosterone all these years ago and compare it to today? Like, what are they basing that on? Do you know?
Yeah, Moses's doctor records. Moses kept very meticulous doctor records, and he had blood workup. I, they didn't get into that.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some level of checking the bone marrow,
Okay.
and there's ways of telling, based on bone structure, I think, even, which is interesting. But they didn't get into that, so I don't know. But you could say generally, I mean, the difference between 1,500 and 300 is pretty significant, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of play in there, and really, I don't want us to hone in on that. I want to say that there's external factors, there's physical factors, there's psychological factors, like Jeff brought up. There's this idea that the zeitgeist, the spirit of this age, like you're pointing at, Mike, has kind of moved away from Christianity as a way of life. Even like you brought up in your recent article, talking about not even just those who claim to be Christian, but to what degree are they Christian, right? There might be just about 50% of Americans who believe in Christianity, right? But of those 50%, the variation of how much they really are keeping these laws, and the variation in their idea of undoubtedly believing in God is kind of a as difference as well, right? So I mean, in other words, we're really in uncharted territories with the degree of the drop off and a belief in God, a belief in also in Christianity, right? And there are examples in Scripture that really hone in on what it is to be a man. I feel, and I think there are a couple. There's been this itch in my mind over the last couple of years, even before Peter's death, about what is going on with young dudes, because I have a bunch of young guys in my life that they sit around. My brother, I have some nephews who they are they play video games. They're good looking guys, right? They're muscular. They got a full head of hair, right? I mean, they're intelligent, but yeah, they don't date. And it's so and also I saw this other thing that said that young men they don't want to drive. They don't want to get a driver's license. They're afraid of going out there. Some new statistic talking about that I couldn't wait to get my driver's license when I was 15, right? I had a hardship license. I was ready to get out there. There's just been this shift of what's been going on lately for young men, and I think these are all related. You then also have the rise in fatherlessness, right? Which is a majority of children born to women under 30. So a majority of these kids will grow up in single parent households. That's never been that way before.
And I think upon that point, that those single parent households are primarily a female taking care of that male or that male child. So that's I think that's another point to mention. Yeah. I
mean, so you see all these symptoms, right? And I think the diagnosis is a couple, is found in Scripture. We're Christians, and I was two men who've really scratched this itch for me. One is Dr. Jordan Peterson, as of late. This is the clean your room guy, right? And he basically was pretty shocked whenever he started these biblical lecture series. He would rent out a hall, and he would have all, basically a 3-hour message lecture on, wisdom that's found in the Old Testament. And he was blown away by how many young dudes were in the audience, right? Young men spending, $75, $85 a pop to come listen to some guy, talk about the Bible for 3 hours. And in that Bible talk, he would tell them, hey, look, you young men, you're not what you could be. You could be a lot more. You're not, there's something that you're missing. And there's a reason why that women aren't responding to your advances, right? Because they don't feel like you are all you could be and all put together. So, what would he tell them to do? He'd say, hey, look, start with something you can actually do. Go and clean your room, go take some chaos, right? Make it order. And then maybe if you can do that, you can then go out in the world and maybe you can put together something else, right? Maybe you could put your life together a little bit, and maybe you can get a job, right? You can convince someone that you're competent enough to work, the cash, as a cashier, and and then this kind of works towards something. And we know that even back in the very beginning, it was this idea of taking chaos and making it order, right? And it was laid at the feet of Abraham, of Adam, And then, which is actually a point that's brought up in the other gentleman who's been kind of talking, who's been scratching this itch, who's Senator Josh Hawley, who's a senator from Missouri, as some of us say, who just recently wrote a book called Manhood, the Biblical Masculine Values America Needs. And he gets into a couple of examples, some of which I'll go over today, which I thought were really great, of what God says men should be and how they should behave. And, I'll go through some of those today as well. I think and I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. But just, that the answer is found in Scripture, and that, the Christian faith is a patriarchal faith. It has this idea at the center of it that men are to be the head of the household, and that there are responsibilities that are that are tied to those responsibilities, right? There's things that are expected. You're not just supposed to be toxic. I would say there is this idea of toxic masculinity, which is these domineering, oppressive individuals who are the head of the household, who are undeserving, so to speak, right? They're not exhibiting the kind of characteristics that God expects of them to earn the respect of their wife and their children. But anything you guys want to say about just those ideas immediately, as far as that the ideas are found in Scripture?
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I do feel that in the church, just what I learned about Worldwide, speaking to people never being in Worldwide, was that some of the ministry and some male leaders of households kind of did have a domineering attitude towards their family, controlling in a sense. So we're not talking about controlling people from a male or parental perspective. Definitely, there's a give and take in marriage, which you find in Scripture also. And I know you're not talking about that, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that there is that side you can go to that's too far on the one end, as I think we are too far on the other end right now in our society.
Yeah, so I'm happy you brought that up, because I wanted to give a disclaimer that I didn't put out, which is, look, am I wanting to repeal Title IX? Am I talking about taking away women's rights to vote? No. I'm saying that we've been having a disproportionate conversation about femininity that we have not been having about masculinity, and especially how it relates to what it is today. And that has been lacking. We've been having this huge conversation over here, and like nothing, if anything, it's been going down, right? Mm-hmm. Toxic masculinity, terrible patriarchy, all of this stuff. And poor young guys are like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be? And so this has been, I think, refreshing to have some of this conversation, being had by these guys. So today I wanted to go through a couple examples. It starts in the very beginning, talking about Adam. You can find that in Genesis 2:5, that it says, "Now no shrub of the field had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprouted. For the Lord God had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to cultivate the ground." So there's this idea in the very beginning right there that, the earth wasn't being cultivated. It was there, right? It was about to be, have the arrival of Adam. And then, God creates Adam, and we find that in 2:15. And let's see here. I thought I had this pulled up here. Yeah. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And that word there, the Hebrew word for to work and to keep, is abad and shamar. And it's also the same words that are leveled to the Levitical priesthood in relationship to the temple, right? To keep and tend to it, to be mindful of it, to protect it, to guard it, is some of the different meanings of that as well. And so from the very beginning, we give, God has created the first man. And what does he tell him to do? He says, look, here you are. I've created you. Your job is to go keep and tend to this thing. You're to develop it. You're to cultivate it. And I thought about this, there's something about men who are keeping and tending to things. They're building something with their life. They're doing something with their life. They feel like they're living out their deepest purpose, right? And it doesn't have to be building some crazy media empire, some, ridiculous thing, right? That's just like, a tour de force. It can be something as meager as, the janitor, leaning on his mop, looking at that beautiful floor that he's just cleaned, kind of having a sense of pride that he's taken something dirty and he's made it clean, right? He's made the world a little bit better, or the farmer, leaning on his rake, looking at those perfect, beautiful rows, right, of planting the corn, kind of wiping the sweat off his brow, looking down and just kind of admiring, the work that he's put in. God does this as well, right? With the Sabbath, he works and then he relaxes and he appreciates what he's created. And you notice these men, at least I do, these guys who have a sense of self-worth with, building something and taking care of something. I don't know if you guys have noticed the same thing, but they have this kind of sense of dignity to them that others don't. They're definitely not victims, that's for sure. Which is we have a lot of victimhood mentality right now.
Definitely. I see this male quality sometimes of a sense of focus. You get stuck on something and you can't get away from it. You keep going. You try to finish this thing off. You have this one track mind in a sense when you get onto a subject that matters to you. So I see that, not to say that women are not focused or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying just me and my wife, I can see where sometimes I will get stuck on something and she said, hey, we got to do this also, or try, we got to go to this appointment or whatever it may be, where I'm stuck on something and I don't want to let go, So.
Sure. Well, God makes Eve as a helpmate, right? And we hear that, we go, oh, see, like women are below men. It's like, no, there's something about if you are part of something big that you have this symbiotic relationship, this back and forth. They're here to help as well. They're tending and keeping to it as well in their own regard, right? It feels like men in some ways are meant to protect and watch the door, right? Kind of, protect the family. And then the woman's job, which is nothing, terrible to say, is to cultivate and to keep the homestead, right? To make the house a very nice place to be. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't understand why it's something to be looked down upon. It's not saying that you have to do that, but it's something that's valuable and you could do, and your life would be great. You could find happiness in that.
I will set upon that point too, that my wife and I, having our daughter, and just over the years, my wife's abilities in trying to work with my daughter when she was young, I didn't feel as adept as she did. It seemed natural to her. It seemed like something, and she has worked in childcare before. So obviously that she had that experience, but there were times where I just didn't get things in dealing with my young daughter that my wife naturally was able to maneuver and handle. And even today, as far as her schooling or her education at home, I'm not as equipped, I feel, as my wife is to naturally know how to deal with my daughter and raise her properly. My wife could tell you a lot more than I have, but there is this division of labor at our house where my wife seems more natural at some things than I do, and vice versa.
100%.
I think I've noticed that about the child rearing with definitely having coming into Connor, who was already here, and she was doing a great job with Connor, but having the foster boys with us, I know that she has that instinct for knowing what to do. So a lot of times, my instinct is probably very a little more harsh than probably a mom's instinct for dealing with things. I don't know if
well, they need both, right? I mean, they really need the balance for sure. And I was going to bring because you're dealing with this and I'm dealing with this. We're both raising young men right now, Jeff. And, there is this idea for me of things that I hear are going on, and school and all this. I'm not gonna go down this tangent, but it's just important. It really underlines the importance that we need to continue to exhibit a good example, right? And it's not strong and domineering. It's usually something like, doing what you don't want to do, right? And doing it with dignity, day in and day out, right? As showing them what a life that works looks like. And it's not all, it's not all rainbows or whatever, it's not all golden. It's usually a lot of hard work. But that's things that I noticed in my dad and my grandfather. I didn't say anything about it at the time, but because I didn't, I just thought everyone was that way. And then you start to look around and you start to see, there's a lot of victims and a lot of, people nowadays that will make excuses. When I knew these men, I knew they had all kinds of issues, physical issues, and they never made an excuse. Usually it was, the wife, my grandmother and my mom, telling them, you need to you need to act your age, and you need to kind of take care of yourself and all that. But let's move on to the next example. The next example would be Moses. Actually, before I move on, I really wanted to point out this. There's this really cool thing about Scripture. If you relate it to other faiths and other religions, that the Scriptures are accounts of men primarily, of not just perfect men who were, fallible, men who had struggles, right? Men who had things that they did not necessarily, weren't perfect. And that's what's unique about the Bible for me. A lot of the other religions will tell you about how perfect their characters are, the perfectness of their God, right? But we have the story and the account of these individuals who had strengths, they had weaknesses, and which is really great because you can see yourself in these stories, right? You can say, I relate to that. I can see when I do that thing. And then we see the consequences of it. Of Adam, and when Adam, is talked about, Howley makes this point that, because he abdicated his responsibility to tend and to keep to the garden, that he lets a snake in, that a snake gets in. I don't necessarily know if you can prove that based on Scripture, but it's an interesting point nonetheless, right? It does underscore that, something went wrong here, right? Somehow the snake got in here. And now, maybe you could lay it at the feet of Adam that he was told to keep, to guard, to protect this garden. So, now we have this snake in here, and when you don't do that, we have dire consequences. And some would say we have all felt the repercussions of that failing, that, he didn't take his responsibility, serious. But, just wanted to bring that up because we'll kind of talk about the strengths of these individuals, and then also how did they fall down? How did they not live up to what they were supposed to?
Blake, excuse me. I've never really put it in that way about how the Bible shows vulnerable men and shows their weaknesses, and when I think about it, how I know we relate probably a lot to Paul. We read the Apostle Paul. He wrote most of the New Testament. When I read of he talks about his weaknesses, or talks about sin and how we deal with sin and those type of things. It's like you're like, yeah, like you understand. Yeah. You can definitely understand what he's trying to explain to us because we kind of live that, as opposed to Greek mythology or things like that.
Yeah.
There's no reality in those things.
Yeah, it's Paul for sure. All the things I know to do, I don't do, right? And this is we see ourselves, and then also you just go through one at a time here, and you'll see with each of these, there's things that they're dealing with, and hopefully we can see ourselves in them. I think that's what, when they overcome too, right? Now there's story of cautionary tales as well, right? Where these individuals are just terrible, seeing King Ahab, right? I mean, you have individuals in the Scripture that there's not too much redeeming. Even in King Ahab's, case, we have him, repenting, right? Oh, would you look at that? God says, Ahab, this terrible king, is repenting, but Moses, we could start off with that. he was a brave guy. He was brave, even though I think it said, and I didn't put the scripture down here, but I believe I'll just read it to you because I don't have it with me. It says, "Come now," and this is God to Moses. "Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" So he said, "I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people of Egypt out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Then Moses said to God, "Indeed." So we have, this idea that Moses was brave, right? So that we should, men should be brave. Even when you have this thing in your life where you're a little worried, right? You're not really good at it. I think we knew that Moses was, I think some people think he stuttered. Some people think, he wasn't very articulate. And so he was a little nervous about all that. But he trusts in God, does he not? And he of course, God helps him with Aaron, being the spokesman and all that. But, the idea here really to underline is that, men are told to be brave, to overcome their fears, and that you'll be blessed if you do, because we know it works out. We could say there was a failing of Moses to be level-headed when he kills the Egyptian soldier, right? He kind of takes matters into his hands, and he kind of leaps before he looks, and then he's on the run for his life.
I think in some of that is kind of that what you mentioned, that bravery, in that maybe he kind of knew the consequences of defending, the slave by doing that. So there's some type, again, it's a little reckless there, but again, there is that kind of sense that he's like, I'm willing to do what needs to be done for what's right.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that is good. So next we can talk about David. Nothing wrong with David. No, that's beautiful, wonderful, awesome David. Of course we all know. And this is you couldn't have a conversation about biblical masculinity without bringing up the man after God's own heart here. And of course, we want to go to the story of David and Bathsheba, right, which you find in 2 Samuel 11. And when I bring up the story of David and Bathsheba, what do you guys think of immediately? What do you think of, what comes to mind?
A problem for many men is being attracted to women,
Sure. Yeah. I we'd say infidelity, right? Adultery. And I would say that that's right. Technically we see that. But I would say that it's a result of something that happens very early on. Actually, it's in the first couple sentences of 2 Samuel 11. And this is the idea that David was not where he was supposed to be. If he was where he was supposed to be, if he was honoring his word as a king, right? He was a king. And so there's certain responsibilities attached to that. The idea here that there's an attribute of what was called fidelity, which is different than loyalty, but God's asking for fidelity, which is to honor one's word as oneself. And so, we can read there, in 2 Samuel 11, it happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all of Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. So is David where he's supposed to be? No, he's hanging out at the palace, kicking back, maybe got some grapes, maybe, I don't know, got some visualizations in my mind, but it says in verse 2, and then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house. And we know what happens from there, right? So if David was where he was supposed to be, this would not have happened. It's kind of what I think the narrator is trying to say here. What we're, the writer of the book is trying to tell us, that, when men are not where we're supposed to be, as one person put it, when you're on the dark playground, bad things happen. And for me, the modern equivalent of this is maybe something a little more trivial, but it's like, you're probably up later than you should be. and you get caught up in reading about, something on Wikipedia. You start reading about the Tanya Harding scandal because you just remembered that happened. And so you spend 3 hours, going down that rabbit hole or something, like that. It's not good, right? You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not where you need to be. And so men should be, where they're supposed to be is kind of the idea here.
One other thing, you mentioned like bravery with Moses. And if I look at David's character, I see confidence. Yeah, but the confidence of when he went to face Goliath, was pretty confident.
Sure.
There's confidence here in committing this act of adultery. I mean, it's bad confidence. There was confidence when he gave the order for her husband. Y'all pull back, and who knows? One person dies like anybody else. He was very confident in making that decision, and I also, so there's a lot of that. We see there's good confidence and bad confidence, and he definitely displays that entire range.
Yeah,
a very masculine trait, I think, and not a feminine trait, but again, a masculine trait that should be a positive trait.
You can even say honor. David is very honorable as well. You see a lot of honor and he was. It's interesting because actually honor is what he's trying to preserve throughout this account with Bathsheba, right? He keeps trying to get, good grief, I'm going to forget his name here, Uriah, to accept his gifts, right? To help him save face. If you reread this account, look at how much you see David trying to preserve the appearance of honor and avoid shame. He was kind of within his rights as a Mediterranean king, if you really want to get technical for that period in time. He had multiple wives, multiple concubines, but this one was already married. He was stepping out, out of place here, right? And if you read it, he says, "I have sinned against you, God, and you alone." It's like, well, I'm thinking about some men who died on the battlefield, maybe Uriah. What about and there's no sense of guilt up to that point, and it's then he knows it was only he was sinning against God, but honor was something that was a very big deal back then, and he and this is what's so amazing about David is that he had no pretense. He knew it when he saw it. He unabashedly tried to restore it, and we know he paid the consequences for it, right? So I mean, he was an honorable dude for sure. And that's why his men loved him so much. That's why his men would be willing to go take an extreme risk for him, is because they looked up to him and they respected him, because there was nothing that was really below him. But he was a man. He was someone that was fallible, and we can see ourselves in that, hopefully. We can move on if you guys would like. There's a lot to be said about David. We could really have a whole conversation about the model of David as a man for now, but of course the perfect example of masculinity, I would say, is Jesus Christ. This idea of being a servant leader, which I know that the Church of God International highly promotes. When you go through the ministerial program, I think you require, one of the required readings is Ken Blanchard's The Servant Leader, which is a great book, by the way, but it really draws upon this, that, men in particular in ministry are to be serving. They're to be washing feet. They're to show strength. Jesus showed strength. He shows the strength of calming the storms, right? Physical strength, almost, this idea of, imposing his will. And he's, the one thing I have against some of the modern day churches is kind of this feminization maybe of Jesus, and kind of keep, I've heard the term marshmallow Jesus, this kind of soft and kind, and he is all those things, but he's also stern. He's the guy who also fashioned a weapon to whip out all of the the money exchangers out of the temple, right? This is not marshmallow Jesus. And he also tells someone to hang a millstone around his neck and jump off the side of a bridge if he hurts one of these little ones. You get mob boss Jesus all of a sudden. This is not soft language from the Messiah.
Yeah, I bet his testosterone would test pretty perfect.
What?
His testosterone would test pretty high.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, was definitely a dude. So confident. Of course, we know this because he's just he knows who he is, and there's that centeredness to him wherever he goes. Of course, you wouldn't expect anything different. This idea that come what may, whatever persecutions, you shall overcome. There's that real strength, that deep-seated strength you find in Jesus throughout many accounts. There was, this idea about hanging the millstone around your neck. Made me think of this movie, The Sound of Freedom, by the way, which is all connected, by the way. Sex trafficking and all this stuff, is related to pornography. Pornography could be, related to weak men who view these things, right? Commit adultery. This is an industry that's fed by the pornography industry as well. They're all connected. You see these things that are on the uptick. I was just really shocked and blown away by.
You know what? I think that may be probably one of the major reasons for the incel is that they have this false, because of pornography, this false image of how women should act, react, and or this fantasization that occurs. And so when they encounter real women, they've only seen this lustful presentation, and again, pornography back like years ago was like, they were doing it at the in the little theater down the road. People the shady men would go there, but now people can access it within 2 seconds and stuff. And so I think that probably may be one of the factors if we're trying to think of what our society that's causing that's messing with men. I think that might be one of them.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. And as Gary says, he says, unfortunately today there are a lot of rooftops and plenty of Bathshebas. Yeah, I mean that's.
What's so ironic about that statement is that with AI now, what's going to be going on 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I think is even crazier than just having all of that on a phone or a computer, so you don't have to deal with a woman. You get your pleasure from your computer screen or your phone. The AI is going to create artificial women that there have already been articles written about this that can take care of you in a sense without having to have a real relationship. And that's why God created, one of the reasons he created sexuality was for that relationship between a male and a female to learn and grow with each other in that bonded relationship, that covenant relationship, where our technology is now taking that and moving it into other things that have no basis in reality. And I think that is another problem
100%.
that young men are facing today.
Since we last talked about AI, Mike, I've read those articles that there is actually the pornography industry has gotten into AI, and people can generate their own AI pornography. And there's also the industry, the robotic industry, which have created like these realistic robotic women. And now you put that artificial personality into this robotic woman for again, like the lonely men that Jordan Peterson reaches out to. There's that, like, forget about women. We'll just, we'll deal with our imaginations of women rather than deal with the real world type of thing.
Right.
If it's not already here, within the next 10 years, going to be causing more and more. I don't think things are not going to get better as far as men in society. I think we're heading towards it getting worse. We just have to, Christians out there, listen to what Blake is saying. Teach your children, because in the church we maintain this standard.
Sure.
Yes. Stay away from pornography, folks. Stay away from those pictures that get you excited. Whether it's a girl in a bikini, don't go there, because then you're going to want more and more of that, and it's just a bad thing. Think of David looking at Bathsheba. It led to bad consequences down the road. The same thing is true on the other end, folks. Look for real women to start talking to, even if it's not working out. As you practice at it, you're going to get better at talking and developing relationships with women.
Sure. I'm going to say something here, and it might be a little controversial, but the energy you dispel when you use pornography is energy that God has put in you to desire, right? This idea, this desire to forestall gratification, right? That desire fuels your ability to go and seek and to look, right? To find a mate. That is energy that God is using to harness to find your partner in life. Now, if you're expelling it all the time, right, and you're not building and developing that real, if you remember back when your teenage years, right? I mean, that there's like this real compulsion to find someone to spend your life with, right? We could say. And that is a delicate system that God has created for us. And we start messing with it, there's problems, and we start to see a lot of problems. Japan actually is now facing a population crunch because there is a record number of young men who are incels, as you brought up, Jeff. Yeah, involuntarily celibate. And these guys are voluntarily celibate, I should say. They're not incels. They are actively choosing to not have a relationship with women and instead having these virtual relationships with either cam girls or with AI. And then of course,
what's a cam girl?
Cam girls are,
I've never heard.
Well, that is where they have these girls who get on camera for you and they do certain things.
Okay, gotcha.
But all of these things,
enough said. I know what you're talking about.
Sure, no. Well, there's the Sound of Freedom really pointed out that men cannot be participating in these things without people. It's not this benign click of your mouse. It is an industry that fuels this sex trafficking trade, and that starts to say, hold on, maybe this isn't something that this.
I think Blake paused for a second there.
Okay, yeah, it definitely looks like a pause there on his expression.
I mean, it's a good pause. It's a good image we got.
Yeah.
Frozen with you, Blake. But perhaps you may want to try to reconnect with us. Do you have any comments on what Blake was saying there, Mike?
Yeah, I definitely I find that connection now that he's making to the sex trafficking industry, the pornography industry, all these things have tethers that connect to each other. And here's the problem, Jeff. If people are looking at this stuff, it's going to keep that industry going. As long as there's money to be made, people will try to make that easy money. And so again, that's why I'm telling our young people out there and older folks, stay away from these websites. Turn off that phone. Use it for other purposes than what these industries are building now. Again, even just a picture of a beautiful woman, folks, that's going to put your mind somewhere else where it doesn't need to be. I get that God's created male and females, and we can admire how handsome this guy is or how beautiful that woman is. Yeah, I get that. I'm not a prude here in that sense. Sure. But what I'm saying is that when you begin to focus on this woman who's beautiful, you're never going to have that woman. That's not going to be your wife. So let's focus on who's going to be your wife, who's someone who can become your wife, rather than some fantasy that's never going to become your wife. It's just going to take you down a dark road, folks.
And I think also, and maybe Blake can address this from your experience, there are a lot of men, and I was one of them, who were single in the Church of God, even single into their later years, or as they get older. Like, hey, Mike, myself, that we finally figured it out. We did our best to do things. I'm glad it worked out the way it worked out for me. But I think there's that point where even men in the church could lose. That are probably could lose hope, that are involuntary celibate, they can't find a mate.
Sure.
What do we say to those guys that are in the church?
Well, can I say something to that? I mean, that's what I was trying to say before I got disconnected, was that there is a system that God has created, and it's difficult, right? You have this desire, you have this thing that you're feeling desperate, and you're not going to do that pornography thing, and you're not going to, you're going to forestall the gratification, but it's difficult, right? Know that is being built up in you for a reason. and that desire is going to help you become very aware of where your mate might be at, and to try it out, just to continue to see at that point of view, because he's going to put a smile on your face. I promise you. What my dad would say, right, guys?
And I'll tell you what, to your point, Blake, just from my own experience, that energy that you're trying to find a mate, what it led me to do is push myself beyond what I was comfortable with.
Yeah.
I was going to internet sites where you can meet someone and talk, just talking, okay, getting to know someone. I didn't want to do that, but I did it. I answered those at one time. The newspaper, my local newspaper, had people that are interested in dating. I went to those sites and started to converse and try that. I went to church singles events where I didn't want to go. I'd fly to some other city. I had a single man, so I had a little extra money at the time, and meet new people and get to know them. And then I also did volunteer work. And again, that eventually led to me meeting my wife. But just getting out there and putting that energy into other endeavors, all of a sudden, some things start happening. You've got to keep trying. And I felt that energy was useful for me, where God was pushing me out there to go beyond my comfort zone. And eventually it led to me meeting my wife. Yeah, I was single for many years. I was dumped once in my mid-20s. It bothered me. It hurt me. I'll admit to that. And but it was probably one of the best things that ever happened in my life, because through that experience, I got to meet and talk to other girls, other women, learn about women, find out more about them. I grew up with all brothers. My grandfather lived with us, so I didn't know much about how to deal with females or talk to females. But through this exposure in trying to find a mate and trying to get into all these other activities to find that mate, it eventually worked out, and I learned a lot in the process.
Absolutely. You also get to, the idea of, this energy gets, you start to get your life in order, maybe, right? You start to say, you know what, I'm not all I could be. And and would I be attracted to me? Would I say, yeah, I want to spend the rest of my life with you? What do you do? Well, I don't have a job. I live in my mother's basement. I play video games, and, I spend way too much time on the internet. Like, yeah, yes, they should turn you down. They should reject you. Looks like.
You're good. You're back.
Okay. But, so there's a part of that too, Mike. I think that's all meant. So just to trust the process is what I would say to young men. Trust that it's going to work out. It'll cause you to continue to maybe working out, right? Get a little better looking, have some self-confidence, have some wherewithal. And I know we're
my advice, grow a beard.
Yeah. Grow a beard. I've been told, you can get a beard. But I mean, there's something to that as well, right? This idea that you are exhibiting masculine characteristics, whether it be, your facial hair, right? I mean, that's, but it's all connected. But let's go ahead and end on this, because I know that we don't have time. We're getting to the end of the show here. I would say that there's 4 characteristics, 4 virtues for men to focus on right now to combat some of the things we've seen in society, especially this counterculture thing with, the toxic masculinity. Responsibility, look for opportunities to be responsible as men. We are told to not avoid responsibility. We're supposed to shoulder it. We see it with Adam. We see it with, David. We see it with all the patriarchs in a lot of ways, that they were responsible for their community. Bravery, to exhibit bravery. This is the idea of standing up for, this day and age, saying what needs to be said to those that are there, right? Speaking truth, even if it's unpopular. And I would say, especially if it's unpopular, to be brave in those circumstances, to say how you see it when it comes up, when you see people that are saying things that are things you don't believe in, to be brave in those circumstances. You think about the words that were given to Joshua in Joshua 1:9, to be, I've told you to be courageous, right? I mean, this is this idea, and he's going to be with you wherever you go. That's supposed to encourage you. Exhibit fidelity, or to be what I would say, someone who is a man of your word. We need to see this more often. That might be connected to the idea of bravery. But to have a relationship with your word, that if you give your word to something, you're going to do it no matter what. There's this idea that I think it's in Proverbs 31, this Proverbs 31 wife, that it says that her husband is respected at the city gate where he sits among the elders of the land. I think of men who I respect and that have my, respect by the elders, right, that we're sitting around a church. And it's usually these men who are out there doing what they said they're going to do, right? You guys are great examples of this. Men of your word, having a high fidelity, and being a leader. Lastly, to exhibit leadership, not being strong and domineering, not coming in and bossing people around, but this idea of servant leadership that we see exhibited so perfectly by Christ, that you are looking for opportunities to lead. And when people come in and they say, oh, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to take over, when I see those people, I say, come in, Tiger, get after it. You know what I mean? Because we're go ahead. I'm just here to try to, forward the action and serve and wash feet. That's my focus. That kind of leadership. Don't wait for someone else, to come along and do it. Jump into action. And I'll leave you with a little story, that people, the young men are looking at us. They're looking at the men. And I'm not talking today just to the men of the church. I'm talking to the women as well, because the women also can exhibit these characteristics. This is not, but men, it's important for them to exhibit these characteristics for the things we've already talked about. But you also, the women, have young men in your life that, you should be encouraging these characteristics when you see them. You should lightly chastise them when you don't. This is important for you as well to kind of, tend to the young men, but that they are looking at us, that these young men are looking up to us. They're taking notes, at least mentally. And, I drive back from Houston to Tyler, which is about a 3.5-hour drive. And very frequently on the road, when we're doing this, probably once or twice a month, we'll come across people that are stranded. They have their hazards on, and we have a habit. Our family will pull off. We'll check on them, and we'll, 9 times out of 10, someone says, "Oh, so AAA is on its way. We got it. We appreciate it." So it's not really, there's nothing going on there. You could say even that's a value, right? There's something that's important about someone stopping and checking on you. You're like, oh, that was nice of the guy. But this last time we actually had a woman who her cell phone had died, and she was late to work, and she didn't know how to change the tire. And so I don't know if you remember last weekend, but it was really chilly. It was so cold I had to put on my jacket outside. It was just like, I was like, it was it's 100 degrees outside, right? So I take my jacket off. It's 1:00 in the afternoon. I get down and I change the tire. And I'm not telling you this to, to toot my own horn here, but I'm telling you this because, when I get done changing the tire and I send her on her way, get her all taken care of, I get in the back in the car, and Tracy, my wife, tells me, "Oh man, you should have heard your son. He was asking all kinds of questions. He said, 'Who's that woman? Why are we here? What's dad doing? Why is he doing that? Who, he didn't know what to make of it, And so he was watching. These young guys are looking at us. They're taking notes. And they were at the gas station the other day, and she said there was this woman with her hood up, and Jeremiah says, "Hey, Mom, we got to go over there and help her. Dad would want us to go over there and help her. We got to go over there and see what she needs." And so I guess he is taking notes. But appreciate the time, guys. I really want to say that we do need to iron sharpening iron here. We don't have all the answers. Obviously, we're all going to struggle. We're all going to fall down, to encourage one another, to encourage those young people in our lives to continue to helpfully, humbly, and meekly show them the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great example of teaching, that the people are watching us and they're seeing us, especially the young ones. A lot of their ideas and their principles are created by the time they're 5 years old. So keep that in mind, the example that we're setting for our young people.
I do know that's true. I know the boys we have, I'll see things that they'll be doing and be like, "Is that something I do?" because they mimic behavior, or they see, this is what a guy is supposed to do. This is the behavior, and so we have that ability to set a good example or a bad example, and that good example will rub off, will work. I mean, it's the difference between probably why we are the way we are. I think my dad set a great example for me, and I appreciate what learning from him, what it was to be a man. I think it's very important, and it can't be discounted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good topic. We haven't broached this subject before, so it's a good one to talk about.
Well, I didn't want to come on here and complain, right? I wanted to come out here and give some vision, right? Provide a corrective, provide something to focus in on, which is rare. You have a lot of people who are deconstructing, not a lot of people building, right? Not a lot of people who state the values they stand for. Yeah. These values are not outdated. They're not arbitrary. They're critical to a functioning society. And we see what happens when they get dispensed with. We're watching it happen right now before us. And so if there's one thing we need to be doing, not in kind of, again, not in any kind of strong and domineering way, but in a real servant capacity to exhibit them as God intended. All
right. Well, thank you very much, Blake, for joining us this week. And thank everyone who's joined us live and for your comments. We look forward to seeing everybody next week on another edition of Prove All Things. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.